Uglami habakatik. Kuyanali kiyo na Jonas Lafferty wani ang mautilin niya matikot kanakala ko ni. Tapos ukot nutakat mani habakataga nali kibut maunga Fort Providence min. Tapos ukot nutakat kay mata Fort Providence mi. Kanok ang latiyo magabta kanyak to kaya kota. Tabrahin ikakakli ko man na Northern Territories kuyanali kit katamat ko ilihaw raktot ilihaming nig na chinyaktot. Tabralo tamat ko aptak tayo na tamat ko din na itkagli kit katamat nutak ka din na inyalalo nutak kalo tamat ko tayo na tap to mga agalaguting atiting ililagay tabrani ikay wani katimarani itchaming kuya galit kigaw na ukaw chip ta kakakaw tigimaw tabraw ko na wagut na ukalagop ta ukaw chip tigun tabralo tayo na tamat ko tayo na ukaw chip ting ato ko blugit ukay isumagalawa kaybut tabralo takit na kanok tamat ko din na kamagay blugit tayo na ilihamaro ukaw chimingik kanok lo inyo na ako timingik tabralo tayo na tabo nga ikakakluman na nalagtuak din na nalagtuak ti chihuro tamat ko mumig chichirot. Tabra wani katimarohi na MLA gurohi tamat ko lo ilokay ni tap ko tay na hukay hura ko he okalago fe ko yun na yakalo fi ikayo na yakahi tamat ko mumik chichirot tam angka tabra December 2024 mi tabra tam angka tay malagtok Fort McPherson mimtak tam na tabartap ko tam ang kamat ko din na mumikchichirarak tamat ko nga inimini na tamat utok ka na ilihimarad ukaw chimingik tapitaw himagait tabaralo tayo na tunagalan tayo na tabara mumikchichibli nagalo ni na mani habak kemarak wani hibun ni akwik pangmi tabraw na tam na tamakaptigo tamay kaptigo na pimpilyo tangit kalawak tugot tabraw ko tabraw tap ko tabraw tayo na ang katam na ay sumagiligo na ipahita lakrut. Kuyanak. Tabraw tamat ko din na ilihimarugo dilo katatay na ito atun tamat ko nga anichira na aktogut kano tamat ko at inyubut habak takik kabut tap ko at isumagilugit tabertay na ukak na anichihakop ta hurak raw tiptingnik tabertay na ko ta ilokatatay na lani aktogut tabraw ni tay na tabralop takin na ilan ni atilay chuk tap ko kurakaw tikrabut agalaan tait na pilyaw takaniuraakalugi tait na atimun. Tabra tait na wapting yun na pinya na kayuta. Tabra hui na kanakulakay na ukakanay chok umane hibun niya pangmi. Tabra tamat ko na tamat ko din nga ingilangan tabra tap ko dili kang ilihimagay tabra nga kanok ang alat si crowd it matkot na ang alat silaw takubulugit tait na isumagrakay tait na ko tingin yun nakwakakagay tamat ko na tabra ni okauti kubulugit tait na inyo na ako tingin tait inawalani inyo ilokating tait na ako ting tamat ko at nakwaktak rawrot nakwakakagay tabra tamat ko tait na tabra nalagto ako nalagto ako tamat ko din nawakaktot tait na nalagto ako iliping yun. Aban mo ni nalagto ako pero tamat ko tani takra pilyaw takayay. Tabra tait na kakmatayin nyo din na nipahura ako nipalog tayo lira ako tait na ko tabra tamat ko na mani katimakpagtuan ito.
This is a respectful workplace, which is why I reminded you today of my expectations. But please understand that I'm both able and willing to do what it is if it's required. Colleagues, our behavior in this House is governed by our rules. If we haven't done so recently, I strongly encourage each of you to review them again. If you have questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to speak to me or to one of our
Tait na tabra itwigi hukupi kanok in magay tatamat ko kano hakto na itwigi hukupi wanga ukauti yakto lalo nga ilitsarap ka lalo nga tait na nga ilitsarap ka yakto nga kanok itukrawarahi wani ukakawik pang hibun niya kawik pang mi tabra 2025 26 tap ko tabra na kinyawar tamat ko kano ato ko ni aktilak sang ilyakanyali kibut tamat ko tait na tunaglan kinyawar na abito ako ato akrap tingnik tabra tap na isagutinali sok tap ko na ni Gerald Kasoon tabertam na commissioner roktok uwani katimang katiganya litikput na ilyakanya tigu punga November hibulingan tabertap kot tabertap tait na kanak tabang wani tait na kano haktot wapti wani umahilatani hibunirwek paum tabra tait na isumatigi kaptigo kanok ituigi hukup ta kanok tamat ko ni nga na ilitsarap kakaluta tait na tabra yalo na ibsantamin tabra tamat ko na tait na harakto ituigi hukupi ilitsarap kakayakap tigutin na kanoklo kanok tait na tabra tait na kanok ato ko na kakpot nagalunini na kautigin niya kakputin na tutkikar na alutam na piyo krautik put tabalutay na Tai na tunagalan hibikit kalawak tilu tamna hannayaw tikput. Aglan ubaptigut tak tai nili madagut kanok angala chirnyak tuagut mani angala chirnyak tikput ili magikput kangapak tai na tok magikput. Tabra time na tamat ko tak nili chakarakibut tamat ko pinabulugit kanohera kanabulugit uma hilatani hibun niya kawikpam. Tabra Mackenzie Delta mi tabra tak tai na Inuvialuktun Lakemin. Tabra tai na tabra tam na atsakoiro di na tamat kuninga. Tabra iloka ilihakata ilihimarugut ukak tawragut. Tabra tai nakto di nyuitin na ilihimarugut tai na kaktukraung itsugut ubagutin na habaktuagut mani hibun niyakbik pangmi tai na kuta inyong nun pibakraung itsugut tai na nakakapta ilihimarugut tai na tunagalan kanoheranek tilakrangit. Tabra tamat ko din na habaw tarik kabut inyuit ilokanyik ataw lugit isuatun pinagrakigalwakibut. Kuya nakpak. Minihita ko na. Minihitawra ko na okalang nektok. February 6 mi 2025 mi tabra tam na ang mga nakikput kanok kinyawanik ataw nektilakrabut. Tabra ukot Cam Lake mi. Tamat ko din na tamat ko din na munakariruat tayo na bulak takto anik tabra tamani niyaktut din na ilitsarap kayo niyaktut kanok angalatsiniraminik. Ukakte. Tabra na ang mariga una. Natunagalan kanok tamat ko din na ubagut tay na kabamawro limani Northern Territories. Alalumat ko at kabamati kilo katatay na ataw chikun habaw takatiging niyaktut. Tamat ko ke inyut habaw takik kabutin na ito atun pihuklugit. Tabra tamat ko tay natunagalan tabra na kuleak tok tulay chut ilitsaka niyak piakota ilitsaka lakatakakota ilitsaka kaptay tay matamat ko din na anitakibut. Tabra na tabra mani ikakakalu atawlu man na nunakput atawlu tamat ko tabra Canada mi tabra Canada na nunakput na angalachibikput. Tabalo tayo na tunagalan. Tamat ko kano tunagalan ato ko na aktila krang nunanik. Tabalo tayo na tamat ko tabra kanok ato ko na aktila krang atutik krang din na mga ilyakararit ka. Tabra kuat Northern Territories ni tabra tamat ko din na ilyakikangit agalakuting ilyakirangit. Tabra WT tabra tayo na tamat ko din sa kalikibot. Kado ito nagalaan tayo na ilyakanya kabut tayo na ito nagalaan na munakap kayo niya aktuagut. Tabra tayo na kanok matko at angalatabut. Kanok na aktilakangit nutakaptigun nagalunin nutakakinyon. Tap ko tabra isa magiblugi tayo nakota.
Approach to address family, intimate partner, and gender-based violence. 7 community.
Tabra 7 22 to 25 nagalan for tamat ko na ay choktali kibut kanit nagalan atulam nivlugit tay na awlaw tirakluit tamat ko no takkat nagalunin inyalat.
10-year national action plan to end gender-based violence provided each jurisdiction with a choice.
Tamat ko aptak tabertay na ilihimagibut. Tamat ko kahit chiraibut kanit na nagalan ato ko niyak tila kranginyik.
And the GNWT's homelessness strategy takes a holistic, interdepartmental approach to address homelessness. In late fall of 2024,
tamat ko tay na GNWT mani tabong awlaw tirakaraw lugit mat ko no takkat kano kayo ko niya ako tikrang inyik pakit ilya kirakalagit sugut. Tamat ko aptak igiluit chot tamani bisikutak taktot tap ko aptak tawa isumangali kibut. Tay naluta ba tamat ko di ikayut accepting ni kaya tak tamat ko di sumangali kibut tay na okakti. Tabraw ko di lakanya na ataw lugo mani nunaput ikayo kikput. Kanok tamat ko alu inyunak to tamat ko na ni inyunapting ni inyuit kihulaka ikayo kibut. Tay nalapta kaya ni na talukuyalak to na hapakutsak Toto ni itakto tamat ko na palihim awrot naptaw kanok habauti kating ilan ni na kanok apkot na apkot ikrangat malakot aliangat maliakrating malikto akluit tayo na tabarlod 681 me taba kamaro de bagut kamaro gut tay na tunagalan tap ko di kayo kamagibot taba lo tamat ko lo tay na hapakrakto di nyo na mingik tay na anelak takto taba kayo kamarakalgit kibot. Tay na tabra tamat ko lang na aktual akrit tay na muna akrirakto tamat ko nga. Tay na naglan kanto na naglan ikayutik sa mingik tay na kanola ka tay na ikayutik sa mingik ikayutik kaktut.
government has prioritized operational oversight and
Tay na tamat ko na ay chira kakto at kinyaran na health and social services pirakigay. Tamat ko na ikayo rakto at tamat ko nga hawalay lanik nagaluni nang ito hawakto ni nagaluni hawalay cho tamat ko na nang ito kakating nagaluni na hawalay Chortit na inyugektonik hapakutakaktot hapakutak mating tamat ko din na hawakraming nik pakilaychut. Tabra tao ko na tabra. Hindi himagibot tayo na ito nagalan. Tayo na ito nagalan tabra hindi himagibot tayo na kanok. Atok tabra una tabra ilo katatay na tamat ko na kayo niya litsu tamat ko nga alangok takto amik nunap tingnig hilap tingnig lo tabra lo tay na tamat ko nga ptak ilya kiraka na litsu ilya manak tukranik nalunayak tukranik tamat ko nga ilitsuri guming. Tabalo tayo na tamat kuning apta ka na tamat ko na tamat ko na hapekrak telugit na hapekrak ko ting tayo na habag to na pitkongit kibot. Ito ato ni na habag to ako kibot tamat kuning tamat ko na yung miktiwan habag kakanak to. Tamani NWT mi Northern Territories ni. Tabalo tayo na ilihumarugot ka dito naglanin na igilunik na pa niya kapta hapekanaktok. Umani ukiumi. Tabalo tayo na ito naglanin na ilitsakaligitsigut wagut na. Aglan matkot habakatigiblugi din na ilitsakip ka niya ako ta habagtuanik pilyaw takto anigilo haba tamat ko nga hibun ni ulaw takto anigilo ikayok takako ta tabertay na ko ta pap ko lutaw taberlutay na inuitin na tangong itsuatit na haba kakublugit man in Northern Territories ni sumatigibot tayo na luptak tabertamat ko din na tayo na tamat ko ding miktiwan haba ka nektot ikayo ko neligit kibot. Ukakti. Tabaptak tamat ko din na angon nektot yung miktiwan inyo nektot tamani nunaming ni kanuto nagalanin Kano ito naglani kayo ko niya neliid kibo di kayo niya ako kibo tayo papak. Tabra holo $220,000 ton kinyaranik atok tugut tamat ko di kayo niya klugit ing miktigun inyo niya akto taba ni nunaming ni iniming ni inyo aktot. Tabra lutay na tamat ko din na tamat ko ang unaktot na habakati kapki tabertay na ko ting tay na tunaglan tabertay na tunaglan tamat ko din na aban mon habaktot inuitin na tamat ko hibuningan ni hibuningan ni tayo na awan mo na habang katigig tayo na alagi galo ako ting tayo na ataw chikun habang tayo. Tam na tabra ilutang at hair over me. Tabra tam na tayo ke magigput. Ikayo ko na ke magigput tam na. Tam na lo apkotakpak mekense vale mig pirakigat apkotakpak tam na tak tabra ikayo ko na magigput tabalo tayo na naglaan kinyawartigun kanakulo taman na nuna ato ko na kangat na ganunin atutingat na ilitsa kanya mablugo tayo na ko ta ilitsa kanya magigput Mani kamarat Canada mi. Tabapta kuat aglang nik ilyak hemarugut. Kabamangit tawk Alberta mim tawk habakatigiblugut. Alagi kalo ako ta wagod mani Northern Territories takpabanit kalo aktilugit tabra Canada mi aglan tam na ataw lugod no nagput tabra tay na tabra lutay na to naglan tabra tam na ato ko na aktilakrak put o kakti tabra lutay na tamat ko din na aban mon habakatigik tot habakatigik tot lagi kalo ako ting tabra tap ko din na isotun tayo na tamat ko ka ikaw laktola ka rin tabra tayo na 25 tin kak tayo na piyuk taming ilya ka himarut tabra tamat ko tamat ko tabra khandu nagalan na utakhe himarugut na tabra wa pililait kalwakait pililait kalwakait pinyak to akhlugit ke at akulling atahi akullimi pilakatakayait 2024 2022-24 tabertamna Fort Liard mi kolak paurakto tabertamna kakti tabertak tamat ko igiluilyok to taber kayo ko niya kamaligid kibut Canada mi tamna atawlugo man nanunagput taber ilokanyig mani nunapting ni Inuvialuktun tay na ikayo kemaligid kibut igiluilyok kemarot ilokakaniak tilugit
emissions and operating costs. In the coming months, additional housing units will be ready for move-in across the territory in the Mackenzie.
tamat ko natin nunakput tamat ko ilokanyig tayra kang taberlutay na tamat ko na ay mabingit tay na Tulita Fort Simpson Tulita tabertap ko na ikayo kamaligit kibut igilungitigun taberlutay na ilokanyig tay na nitakakit muna kanya kamaligit kibut tap ko tay na tabertap ko kabamarot na ataw chikon na habakakat tamat ko ilyakan niya ngit kibut na waptik kun pilay kikput tabani umanig ukiungani tabar October 2024 mi $845,000 tun kinyara ni katuligit chigut tabar tay na tamat ko ikaya ko na ahluit tamat ko si habati ko na ilihaw tibilugit habang niya nimik ilihaw tibilugit ilakanyig tabertay na kuta kakti tamat ko di na isuatun haba akrat iliyaki himarugut tamat ko ni nga hibularmi taberlutay na tamat ko na hibuniyoktit tamat ko na munakrirod inyumingnyik ataw chikunin na habaw takanyali kikput tam na ilokata taw chikun tap tumani kano kanyuni ako tipting ni kayo taw ni aktok tam na kuyanak Great Claiming kuyanak o kakti tabraw kot tabraw na nagtakap ko una premium o kauti ka nga tabraw tayo na ito naglanin 9 hectare tabraw ko tayo nagkataw chikun habala kamig tabraw tap ko na o kay kangi hibun niya ko tingin niya kangi laki niya tut ataw chiko kotakiyan Inyo ekto tabar tayo na sumati kapke tabar luptok tamat kot tabar tayo na ito naglanin na mani habaga una pekpaganito aluga tabar na ilokatay lihi marugat kanok ka tap tuma hapekanyak to iserniak to atun iliga manna nunakput tabar tayo na ito naglan tamat kuninga at chakongit kalawariga at chakokiga pang mapagtay na ilirak man na mani territories ni tabelo tay na imak putok taman na hunyalin niya ko ni tabelo tay na tinagalan kanit tinagalan tamat ko putok tay na tabra ato ko ni aktila rakput tay na tabra tamat ko tikit kalak tinagutam na ukakira ka tabra tamat ko tay na tinagalanin na NWT tamat ko at nibaktangit minerals nik pirakigait nibakuting ibaklirakto tamat ko nga tabra tay na koting tay ataw chikun atay chuko kemanelichit tabra tay na ilan na butaba ni America me isumalo lermi tay na ilitcharavlud tay na nunakputu na hapakhaler niyak tilakranga koyanak
Recognize Mayor Frank Hope of Norman.
tabe Mayor Frank Hope kaya ilitiga mga pulakman
For a little bit. I think some of you have members, staff, and commissioners had the opportunity to talk with them. Continue your advocacy. So,
koyanak mga pulakawit
member statements. Member from Yellowknife North.
Yellowknife North me kuya na ako kakti tabe lokata tabe nalakta kay madugut tabe nakinlikatay na kairaktonik tabe ngayak tolo tamanalo kanok tamani na pisipitak to kalakto nun na apkotini tabe ilitsakiru tabe lokata tay na ilitsakiru ilitsake marotun tay na okakahimagay tap ko din na kabamabot na bikimam niblyugit kinyarayar niblyugit taraptak tay na ilan niwapting nun tay ma na yaka niblyuta tay makna yakalokaktut tabelo tay naptak tay na itutabra ilokating tabra ilokata tay na sumati giyaw na uwaptik kunin na kutsikinyarlo habak pagputay na habak raw tiyalakput tabra kanolo tamat ko lo kanol tunagalanin na tamat ko din na kipirakaktat kinarot kanol tunagalan tamat ko tay na nawing niyangit katigut tabra tay na tunagalanin lokating tamat ko din nawala tay na inyunayakakaktat nagalunin tabra tay na tunagalanin na ingmiktigun habalgit tabra tamat ko din na kutsi na habat nagalunin huraka utibut na huwag mahinya ako tigit tabra tamat ko habaw takarnagit na tabra kaya nako kakti
Member from Yellowknife North. Member from
Satumin kaya nako kakti tabra kot Norman Wells me 2024 me October me
I spoke in this house about the Emergency Management Act.
tabra ukakahe magkakatam na kilameralugit tamat ko ikayok takrawal waktut na isumatikap ki Okakti. Tabra kot ukroro lakirot. Tabra tamat kotit na akit chokay tait na tunagalan. Tamat kotit na ato ni aktilangit. Norman Wells Smith, tabra tok tamat kot ukroro lakirot. 10 to karo kiuni tabra tamat kotit na habaki magahigaloaktut agilan tamat ko tabra tait na tunagalan tabra lo tait na tunagalan tamat kotit na tamat ko tabra ing miktiun habakakto tap kuninga ay papakhawaktot allanik allakun allanik nuluting uktoka kanila kahilichut. O kakte. Tait na tabra tamat ko din na uktokakta uminga. Tait na allangi alawak tilugo. Ing miktigun tait na tamat ko din yun aktot tabra ni isotun inyun aktin ni akalabot. Tabra tamat ko din na nuktatakalo aktiluit. Kanakalo tamat ko din na ay mabingan ni na unagutit okrokorot. Tabra tait nun. Tait na tunagalan tabra tam na okakanya falakiya. Kanakalo tait na tabra tamat ko tait na tunagalan. Kaya nakakakti. Inuvialuktun. Kaya nakakakti. Tabra tamat ko din na. Tamat ko din na. Tamat ko tabra munakrirod no namtingnik nagalunin imamtigun munakrirod. Tabra tait na. Tait na tunagalanin na munakri himarod tamat ko nga. Tabra tait na kanok ataw chikunin na ukake magalawak tabra tait na utakin ngulak to arirak tutap ko apakroka ingikroka ora na kalawak ko ting. Upinakabot Northwest Territories ni Tamane. Naichok tam na upinakakpot. Matumatitunin na alatun inyuneranikun. Tamat ko na tait na tunagalanin na. Tait na tunagalanin na tapkod at lango kong itkit ka tait na huli atok to ako git ka ilitso kanya to ako git ka tait na tunagalan kaya nakpagka no payako apakiruta kakarunga tamat ko nga nuna nagilo kanok ang alarutinginik kaya
care in the territory and confirmed with the Minister of Health that the department is reviewing its delivery of respite care. I've since met with some constituents and received feedback about some things that we could be doing differently. Mr. Speaker, currently the territory is spending a significant
$50,000 Jinaranik atoraktut. Atawak inyuk inyunelaw taktin ni aktun Tait na tabra kanok inyuni aktot tait na tunagalan. Tabra tamat ko din na munakrirot tait na kinyaranikin na ay chuyurot social services nik pinakigay tamat ko kinyaranik ay chuyo aurot habang ichonik nagalunin habalay chonik utok kananik tabalutay na kanokanyalak pat mani Northern Territories mi inyuneng ichot
significantly so than what we're paying now. More importantly, Mr. Speaker,
tabalutok tamat ko na
where they belong with their families.
kanolotay na tamat ko na munakrihurot kinyaranik na ay chak tuhurot hapakrakto na kinyong niktaber tamat ko nag tam na isumagis kuwalo akiya nutakakit na abita kong idlugit ataw chimito ako blugit
We aren't in the best position to be expanding our own programming.
tabar taktay na tabar taktay na tabar tamat ko na ikayo ka na yakalawaki mo tamat na kaya nakakakti.
Thank you, member from Frame Lake. Member from
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to take the opportunity on
Sabi ko na kaya parli kita ukiuchemi ukilya tako he. 2025 mi tap te mani. Tap ko te Fort Providence mi. Tap ko ukiuchak tam na kaya huyak parli in maso. Tap ko lo te tayo na tinagalan. Tamat ko din na kuya giblugit tap ko kuya parlit kay tabak tot kinyara ni kingakalakto ang itchot nagalunin utakyo ang itchot kinyara nakita ako ding tamat ko di kayok parag kangit tayo na ko ding tap ko kuya hubilit kay tam na ublok okay na kaya nakpak kaya nakpak day chomin Range Lake min
Mr. Speaker, we are
kaya
in a trade war.
tabrawa tayo na umani ang uyak to akasugut tayo na tamat ko tayo na
I know Northerners are worried, and by virtue of having the earliest legislative session this year, we get to demonstrate that leadership with the first opportunity to formally address the illegal tariffs threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump. Today, let us reaffirm our commitment to upholding our sovereignty and taking all necessary action to support a Team Canada approach against the threat to our communities. Monsieur le Président, les Canadiens et Canadiennes sont fiers de savoir que notre pays est le deuxième plus grand au monde avec près de 10 millions de kilomètres carrés de superficie. 19% de la population totale de notre pays réside à moins de 250 kilomètres de la frontière américaine. En tant que résident du Nord, vivant dans les régions éloignées de l'Arctique et de le subarctique, la plupart des Canadiens, certainement la plupart des Américains, ne connaîtront de nos communautés nordiques que ce que l'on peut en voir en consultant une carte. En effet, ce sont les premiers peuples qui habitent ces terres depuis les temps immémoriaux et les colons qui les ont suivis, qui défendent la souveraineté du Canada. But, Mr. Speaker, we have always had friends and allies who have helped us in this task of keeping our communities safe and strong. Canadians and Americans have stood shoulder to shoulder for over a century, fighting in 2 world wars where the resources of the Northwest Territories played a crucial role in ending those conflicts, and thereafter to defend against the threat of the Soviet Union by building and operating the DEW line.
tamat ko din na mga tabang tabang alas kami na mga nunapting nuntay na ataw chikunin na habaw takay tin na pigigay. Tabalup tay na tak tay na kanaka tabrap tak tay na man na nunak put Canada mi ataw lugo tam na ikakak lugo ataw lugo Canada mi Inuvialuktun mat wagut tay na tabalup tak tay na Canadians mani Canada mi na Inuvialuktun marot na ukaw dari ukaw tili kipsi ko yan akpag ukakti.
Milne Center.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with 971 days left in this Assembly, time moves along fast. But I say to this government, we need to be relentless and unapologetic for our fight for Northerners, for a better tomorrow.
Ula ko tabra Inuvialuktun ula ko ni na hibunak pati na tot kay karna kemagait mat ko na ataw lugi man na kana tapta na makita tigut kanolo tay na tabra lokata tay na tigut tabra tamat ko na kaukle ko na tabra tay na tamtap ko na na anguyak to kagati utap ko nga na alang akong luwi na inyo na nagput mani nunapting ni inyo na aktogut o kakte tabartay na tabartamat ko din na tabartap ko din na kiyo ko yay chodun ni tabartay na luni na tap kami nga na kanya-kanak to aming tawag to kamay chutin tabratam na tayo na ataramig na naucheka to aming inyo na kamang itsugot ataramig ilo kata tabra tayo na ito nagalan kanakula tayo na tabi kano ito nagalan milyon tun lunin tayo na kinyawa atok takbot tabi tamat ko din na kinyawa kaukli mo ma o kakaka nga tayo na ito nagalan tabi ataw chikunin na taw chikun habaw taki kuptiyo habaw taki kuptiyo tamat ko din na ito kakaka na akput tabi tayo na ito nagalan tam na uniyo ko nago aulabik tabi tayo na kaya nakpak
Member statements. Member from Hay River South.
Here South tabi kaya likit kamat ko di taktat mga tabi kaya likit si mga utakapi tabi tam na tayo kaya yakpalit kaya kalau na busy mi kaya blue tabi tap ko di na hura na makparak tot tabi tayo na tabo nga tidnap tigit kaya liit kibot tabi tap ko tabi lo tayo na tamat ko di na kaya liit kit ka tabi tayo na Hay River min tabi lo tayo na dun tabi tayo na dun nagala kimarakaktot kaya parliit kit ka wanga kamagaliit kipit tabi tayo na ikayo kapti na ikayo raktol tamat ko di lo kanyik kanak tamat pira law taktot kaya galiit kit ka Hay River min tabra tapkop tabra koya curly raktot kuya gilit kit katabrani tay na pira law takto tabani ikayuri kayok parakto tapkot kuya gilin meet ka kuya nakpak kuya nak river south min
Going to advise you this is going to be very difficult, so like celebration of life to do.
tabra kot
Julianne Burke was born May
Julian tabra tamna at tabra tamna tabra pe ngayu rock nutakkan itapkot ang ngayu lemin pe ngayu ngatamna Fort Nelson tabra slumber kemun utek toak tabra pek paganito aloy na kuya tabra ni kati kami yung anana ni tabra lutap ko Katrina tabra tam na agaraw rakaman kuya ihukang tabra kuya huk parli chutap ko ilang hating tayo na pixeli ang mating tabra tamat ko na tabra tayo na tunaglani na kuya ili tsaka anana ni tayo na ikayo na ilihaw riraktok tabra tayo na tabra tamat ko tayo na kuya ili tsaka kuya mi tabra tamat ko nga kanya-kanya rakurok na kanok matkot nekarutit apko tuminginyik ibakla kami tayo na kuya puga kihutaglan tayo na ilitsakip kaklugo kaya tumigim magaynyik tayo na kunit nanangata kulea kakagat tayo na ptak tayo na tunaglan tamat ko din na nukani kaya ilagay tsakagap taok tam na ilahaw rizok.
Because they're going to be go to school starting Monday morning. She would like if she
Utakin yung lakaktok sko kaktok ramik, ilihakaktok raminik. Tabalutay na nukani tam na pitkulait ka ay mamin. Ay mabimingni. Tabalutay na. Tabatam na tayo malaktok. January 4 mi tayo malaktok. Tabalutay. Kanya na bilo ni akaliak pang minta timnya takirami ko takanya na bilo ni pikang akan eh. Bulak to tamat ko ta ili tsakilay inuwik like me. Sila na sagala kaya liit kaya mga kaiman. Kaya nakakay kasi mga pula kaya ako eh. Nalakto kaya ako eh. Hindi siya yakto ko eh. Range Lake min. Kaya nak. Kaya nakapawalay kaya tam na tabraw ko kaya litiga tamat ko ikayutaw na rin mantap ko nga kaya rin kanok angalan niya ako tigrapting nit tabraw kakatig ka tabra Prime Minister Mantimi, tabra na tabra tam na una ako batigun tam na ako tigin niya na bilugo pang mapagpinyangin ni bilugo pikanga. Tabra luptak tayo na uka kami tayo na tamantam na uka kani ako batigun tam na uka kanya linya ni bilugo pikanga. Tabra luptak tayo na
It is united.
kaya nakakakte.
Oral questions. Member from Rangeley.
Take
Range Lake, kaya nak. Tabra got kaya nak tabra tam na kauklak kay na kaya liit kaya tamat ko na ni na ikayak tabra tam na hibunak pagtay na tut kikana among kaya liit kaya nakakakte. Tabra 13 tuntamani nunapting ni tauchikon natam na tutkikakamanakakiput. 22-25 mi tabra tamat ko atin na muna ka di habot na kanduto nagalan. Ato ko niyak tilakrangit nagalunin kanduto nagalan o kautigin niyak takrangit tabra muna ka nakibut tapkot. Tabra ikakakalo ni man na ikakakalo man na nunakakpak. Tabra ilo kata ili maragut kanduto nagalan tabra kabag paura ka niyak tuagutin na atawhim inyong pinyangit katam na inyuek tuaguto pagutay na katimablutay na katiluta tap ko tabra ili magibut.
Now is the time, and if we do that, even if we cut our
Kaya nakakakte. Kaya nakakakte. Tabraw na okay ka nga. Okay ka na kano dun himmerniak tilakra nga ilitsure upiaklo nga. Ili himarut kano dun nagalan tam na kasalikon okrokorotikon tabrani tamani na alas kami habak paurak kemarut ay papak. Tam na tabray litsure liawli kiga kano dun nagalan na ako tigo kumaong tam na tabray okakipak na tilakra nga ilitsure uklo nga. Tabra ila katatay na ili himarugot okrokoroati gud. Tabra ila katay ili chakarogot tay na tunagalan ato ko na aktilakrangit. Tabra lo tay tamatkot United States min tay na hingik na tinuray ron nalo kamanak kibluting tamaw nga inyong nuktaktuan na tabralo tayo na tawak tam ilokata tayo na tabra tayo na kasalinik o krokoronik ibakililya rugut tawak mani nunapting ni kaya nakpak.
Supplementary. Member from Rangeley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Premier withhold the NWT's critical minerals from imports or exports to America?
Tabra kaukli mo nut kakti talabang tam na aulaqtita qungilluit tamatkuatit na uyaqaurat pakitangit quyanaq.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too will be asking for.
Quyanaq.
I'd like to reflect back my questions
Tabrona
regarding NATO's 2% spending requirements.
tabrona matkuat tanngungit choice 2% tun it 1.3% tun tayo na tinagalantaw tamat kuninga kinyaranik atutakakpat.
Is the government doing on the projects and initiatives I pointed out in my speech with respect
Tabra kana tinagalani na tamat kuat taman na apkotekpak tabra luta tamat kuat tau tabra tamat kuat tabra kana tinagalan kuyanak o kakti 35 tun tamat na lo 35 tun tayo natin 35% tun taman na apkotekpak tabra tamat kuat na katimakatigirakay ka na tamat kuat tingmiro luwaktit kanokolo tamat kuat na ilitsakanya ako ta aban mun na habaktuanik kanokolo tamat kuninga ilitsaka paak na ako ting na ni bluting piut kaya nakpak.
Member from Illinois Center.
Mr. Speaker, listening is great, but it doesn't put food on the table. It doesn't put gas in the car, it doesn't buy Christmas presents, etc., Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to ask the Premier, what type of campaign is the territorial government?
Tabay lakata ilihimarugut tamat ko at habawra ka niya kalawa ko ta tamat ko ni nga ay chutik saptingnik habang ichut kanaktam na tabat 2% tun ka tap tuma kanutun kasali liranyak parung na matkot na kaligabot nagalunin kahit makamata ay chutik sanik nan malay chon ne tabrap tay na kanto naglani na kanto naglani got o kauti ra na kalak tiluting allagi chut tabrap tay na tinaglani na kanak tamat kuatin na ilitsaka kakata tamat kuatin na kaba maurati ilitsaka niya ako ta tamat ko nang tabra una kaukla kapakirut takiya kanito nagalan hunik tunio kaibat tamat ko ni nga lunin kihunun tamat kuat ay chok tawa ay chok tak hemabatigit.
aggressive campaign to sell these types of initiatives? Because if we sit here and do nothing, that's exactly what we'll get.
Tabraw ko wagutay na hurangit kupta ituak kupta kano hurangit kupta tabra kapit tabra tap ko tabra tamat ko kaba maurogo to pagutin na ilihimagik putap ko pingahurugot
This cabinet team that's been selling this, I've not seen in 1 year any result of that. Hence, I'll ask the question, would
tabraw ko na
you be willing to form a working group with some regular members so we can help
tabra
collectively and territorially so we don't miss this billion-dollar opportunity? Thank you.
tam na $1 billion tun tam kinyawanik ato ko na kangat tam kanit naglan ukwatit na ala ataw chikoarlugit tamat kot amalego roluni tamat koloi namunakrirot kam ay nalo hebunirtit kuyarak Una tabra hibulli kanya aligid kiga. Una tabra o pinagat kek o pinagak apakaru takik ka una tait na negarutityun kanok tait na tamat ko alang o magaita nagaluni tait na kanok heraw tigi magaita tamna kaya nak tabra tamna na angala chiri tait na nunam tingnik tabra lu tait na lu tabra ukuat kabamaurot mani kabam ikayok te kakoting tabra laptop tait na tamat kuninga na malakatak sa leoraktut tait na laptop tabra tamat kuninga GNWT talk tam tabra tait na tunagalan Inuvialuktun na ili hemagait ili tsaka hemagait tap ko tait na tunagalan tamat kuninga na nunagiblugo nunangata tamat ko tamna pekrutak palang niyakiga tamna kanok tamat ko na kihullaka taman na atulamagan nuna kaya nak kaya liit kaya tamna tap ko tabra apakrutak kangit kanok tamat ko kihullaka taman na angala rutigin niya ni marsung tabra tait na tamat ko na ili tsaka niya aktut ili hemarit nuna tigun tabra tamat ko na ilokain nikin na ito ko niya kibut tait na ko tabra ni
Member from the Satu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for that information. I'm sure our audience are listening. My third question is on the timeline for the completion of
kadadalalan aton tam na habaw ta kanyak tilak sang ilit sa Inuvialuktun kaya nakawakakte tabra tait na tunagalan na tait na tunagalan tam na tap ko tabra ilit sa kakada tap ko ng katimarakak to anon kanok angalan niyak tilak tam na kihullaka nunagi niyak tilak nuna tam na atulamagan kihununagilan kaya nak tam na tabra pekho takilag kiyo na tabra na pekho takilag kiya tabra kapit tabra tamat ko na tabra ko kadito nagalan tabra na kihunon laka 147 tun. Tabra tap ko na mani nunapting ni tayo na tunagalan at ikayok magibot. Tabra tap tamat ko na ala ni inyo na akto tabra tayo na ilitsaka kakata nagalo ni kihutilangin niya. Tayo na ipatatak-takpawan na umang nunaptingnin allanit inyuniaktot kanok ikayutikrangin nalup kayuk tutuli pang mapak nalup kayuk tutuli. Tabra kanut nagalan tamat kuat. Kanut nagalan ikayutikra kakpatak papani na mani nunapting ni ingatshot. Tabra tamat kuat tay naptak takpamani na tabra tamat kuninga tay na tabra tak tay na kanok ikayutikrangin inyuit takpamani ito atin na tabra tay naptak naitsuamik ikayutikraichut frame like me kaya nako kakti tabra NWT mi mani tamat ko tabra income support nik pirakagay habalay tamat ko habalay chot ing miktigon habalay chot tabra tap ko tay na kaya nak tabra tamat ko na tabra tay na tamat ko nga habak takaktugut tay na katimara kaktugut tay na tamat ko nga ilitsaka huktonik nagalonin ilitsaka niyaktonik. Akolyak tam na
Speaker, I would like to see, as part of that work, analysis of whether the territory could save some of the money that's being spent on out-of-territory service for the reasons I spoke to today. Does the minister have a timeline for the Assembly as to when she expects to see the conclusion of this investigation?
Tam na pahuta kakugo binyak tilakranga Inuvialuktun. Ilitsakap ka na tap timinga kanod naglan tam na pinyak tigu kanod naglan utak kanyak tilakranga nagalunin tamat ko Northwest Territories nin maning mga nunapting nin aulaktot utek tili kuptit nunapting nun.
Minister of Health and Social Services. Oral questions. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions today are for the Minister of Health and Social Services. So one of this Assembly's priorities is improving access to primary care. Just so everyone's clear, primary care is the first place people go for health advice and care, whether that's a community health centre or a family doctor. So has this government defined anywhere what exactly improving access to primary care
Kigutakak nga. Kanok. Kapini tayo ataw chikun na o kao tira kay puk tabra na kapini tayo na utim aban mun tayo na o kakaray puk tam na tabra tayo na tunagalan man in Northwest Territories kanya minrechut tayo na nunapting ni kihenik pingitchut agalan tabertay na tunagalan ataw himigtak takaktualak ko tingilakan ikakakalaguman na nunakakpagputila kating tayo naktolak tut tabertak tayo na tunagalan na ilitsuri kabut tayo na tunagalan kanok kayo ko na aktilakrangit nagataba ili madugut alang okto tapkot muna karingingit tamat ko nga anertonik. Kaya ko kakti.
That's a good start in terms of our overarching goals. But for example, the primary care reform carried out in Yellowknife last year seems to have been done as kind of a trial, something we'll try out and see if it works. But has anyone
Tabraw na
defined what exactly
kanok
primary care reform
na
aimed to accomplish?
kanok tamat kot muna kanyak patigit. Kanok lo ilitsoy. Kanok ilitsoy kanyak pita tamat kot na ilitsoy kanyak pita kanok muna kanyak to.
As the member has stated, in Yellowknife, there has been some changes within the program itself. It went from primary care teams of 10, which did not include, all of those teams did not include physicians.
Tabre lo kating tay na ilitsoy kay maragut.
Nurses on those teams.
Tamat ko tabre tay na hami kato hami tag takak to lingit chud.
Holistic wellness work.
Tamat ko lo nursirat
What happened was is that
muna krirat tamani alang utak tito tak libit tay na ataramik tay na tabre muna kriyak tugud inyong nik anek to nik tamani inunapting ni alla nilununa ni tay na ilitsaka matagut
as you know, as they access care, that they will see the
tay na tinagala tam na
whatever their need is.
kanok ilitsaka niya kaugat kanok kayo di kraming ilitsaka niya kaugat tamatkot tamatkot na tap tu mga tap tu maning itak ilo kihen tay nakto ang itchut ilo kain nik tay na tamatkot tay na taramik ataw chicken mun hawak to aktut ako leksa ko na apekita ko.
Okay, sorry.
So, do we have a way of checking in after a year or 2 years with patients in your life to see if what the minister described has actually happened, whether people are able to access the right a way of checking in with both patients as to whether it's working well and with the practitioners themselves to see if the theory of how this system is supposed to
Kanok ikayutit tamat ko ikayok ti langit inyong mo na tao mo ilitsaka follow to nga. Ukiw to ang man tamat ko ilitsaka kanya ako rut. Tamat ko dit na ilihimaw ako kay tamat ko dit na kanok lutay na. Tamat ko dit na ilitsaka niya kaptay na ataw chikunin na tamat ko kanyak to ako gibutay na tunaglan tihuk ka atim magayta alaging magayta kanokan niya ako tingit.
Can bring that back to NTHSSA to see what internally that they are doing to audit the changes in their system.
Tayo na ito naglatawar tamat ko din na ilitsarap kanya akong tap tami nga nalop kanya kalunga nalop kanya ako blunila ni kanok tamat ko kihut ikayok paura kanya tutik ikayok paura utikrang itap kualo ikayok kaura kalugit tayo na tabi ilakan ikakaluwaman na matkod inaralani muna karakalahor. Tamat ko din na ilihimabid kanakin magayta tap ko na ilitso kanya aktot nagaluni taktirot Kanakalit sa kanya acting itay na alang ang iikpat. Tabi lokatatay na.
Our staffing models in our health centers, and not just, our centers that currently have nurses, but all health centers across the territory. We have 9 communities that have,
9 dun.
they have a CHR, and for lucky, they have a home support worker in those communities.
Tabi lokating 9 dun kaya inaaralani nahabag tayo chut. Muna kararay chut.
Clients are having to travel to access services, and what the cost
Tabi inuyak chut.
is closer. So this review
Inuyak chut tayo na aulak chutat inuyak chut. Anyak tuat naglikak tuat. Tabi inuyak chut tayo na aulak chutak nagit tayo na tun. Tabi agilan tayo na kilamigi kayo ilay chut.
we're given housing, we're giving,
Tabi iluniglo ay chocolate. Kinyawa ni kahin atok para ko tatap ko at maong aulak ti takluid yalo na ipumunagalunin alanan nun Edmonton humula ka aulak ti takluid tabi tayo na inyuek parak ti tamat ko at kinyawa ni katok para ko urugut tabi tamat ko at muna kariranik tayo na ilokating tayo na ataw hitaw rakoting tamat ko nga muna karakaktut.
travel. We all talk about the travel that we're spending on our residents in the Northwest Territory.
Tabi lokata hindi marugut.
What's going on right now with the medical travel, the modernization in the health center, the primary care reforms.
Tamat ko tabi tayo na tinaglan. Kanok habaw tayo mga tap ko akulil lakit katabra. Tabi mani Northwest Territories ni nunapting ni tabi tayo na tinaglan tabra. Kaya nak.
Thank my colleagues for speaking to this generally the topic of tariffs in Canada today. Mr. Speaker, will the Premier seize this opportunity to encourage
Tabi mga premium una ato ko pang o kakagkani nakuha kanyak pang. Kaya nak. Premier. Kaya nak.
Politically charged, we come with a lot of baggage, but I am working to drum up investment in critical minerals, explain the importance of critical minerals to the rest of
Tabraw ko na Canada mi matkot minerals nik pekaktugud mani Canada mi inuyaktod minerals nik ibaklakurod ni bakuting nunapting ni tabraw tamatkot na ilihimagatigud mani Northwest Territories ni tayo na inuyaktod nik uyakaranik tamat ko nga tanik tun pirakagayit minerals nik.
not only be punching above our weight, as I said in my statement, but also to show leadership in the availability of critical minerals in our territory. But as the Premier knows, we don't make a lot of money off of resource royalties right now.
Hilakata tabarili marugut ka nya kinyawanik inyuektonik pingitsugut tamat ko nga kanok na idyo kay guting habang niakpat ICI tamat ko aptak tabay sumati kap ko na tayo na mga Northwest Territories ninunapting ning tabay inyong Northwest Territories ni tabay lokating tayo na ilihimagatam na tabay ilokating tayo na ilihimagat.
for more support for Indigenous governments to be part of that program.
Tabra tay na tamat ko ni nga ataramik habak tuak tutap kot tangungit chot nuna miktigun ing miktigun nuna miktigun nuna kaok tot tabra tay na nalungit light shoot tamat kot na uyakar ibakalektonik ibakalektonik ili maurut tabra na ukautigid lang niya kaya na tabra kot GNWT hok kanok tamat kot na hok tamat kot alangok to no nagput hilyak pulo tabra tap ko din na ukakaming tay na ating itsok tam na ukautingat. Tabi ukot nunamik at nunanig ato kaming nagalunin imakun. Tabi tamat ko din na mani ibon niya kawik pangme. Tamat ko atanakuro tamat ko nga nagalunin mo nakrihurot hingmiktigon mo nakrihiraktut. Alagi hutik tap ko tamat ko nunakun becoming. Tabi tay na tabi tamat ko din na ato ko na kami tigitit na galaktanik bihuktanik biyumaranik biraktut kaya nak tabi na apakayuta kay kap ko tabi na apakayuta ka kangikayong nakanga apakayutamik.
While ensuring that they're still doing their duty to consult is met. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Like Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minyahitaw ako na tamat ko ni nga alangok to nagsilaptingnik. Tamat ko na atutinganik nunamik nuna atutinga piyo aloar nago tamat ko tabra alangok to hilyapta na alangok to ilokatik tay na nakatkatam na Nuvik bootleg pin. Tabra kot kaya nakakakti tabra kot tabra kot ya pigo manay chudukot inyunektot na tabra ikay na habakatiyak ka nagit waptik kuntay na hurakalay chugut tabra lutay na kanokin magayta kanokit langit ilihima matigit tay nakota tabra kangikakota kangikakakanata kanok angalat siringit nin tam na kanohialay kikput kaya nakpak
Work with me and the Beaufort Delta when I do have concerns around
Kuyanak. Kuyanak tap tuminga tap kuninga anga kone naga kone pitkodanik tap kuninga tam na keheni kisimagi kuyanak. Tabra pang mapaktay na anga kalugo naga kalugo pilay tiya. Range Lake Min. Kuyanak. Matkot tam tap ko na isumati kapti. Inyugek to tay naman inyo ni akimarut tangungit tangurot. Mani inyo ni akimarut ay papak. Kanok tamatkot piyak ni akpatigit inyo ni ako tingit. Kaya nakakakti. Tamat ko nga piyay luta. Atuti kangenyik tabatay na ito naglani na ilipti ko aktutit. Inyuek tay na tabatamani inyo ni akimarod ilihimagibot.
Whatsoever. There's a lot of problems with what we have, and we want to get to a place where we are using an evidence-based approach to our policies, that we're trying to figure out what it is that we're trying to solve. And in this case, looking at evidence, Mr. Speaker, we have a population that we serve that's 50% Indigenous.
Inyo ni aktatamani ilicha himagibot. Kanok tam kuninga piyay niya ng itsukot tamat kuninga inyo ni ako tinginyik. Tabi kanadyo naglaan tamat-tamani nahawag to tamat kunan ni public service nikpilakigay tabi tamat humili ka hawag to kanok tamat ko na alang ako na ang tilangit ilitsarap ka ilitsugot. Tabi 2020 na inyo na kemarut inyo mani ilang itagalan sa manikihenik inyo na kemarut inyo na aktot tabi tayo nito nagalan kano kayo matigin yak pitigit. Tabi ako kakti.
An influx of folks.
Tabertay na ito nagalanin na isumati kapti ko tabertay na ito kuli. Tabertay na kanto nagalanin na
Mr. Speaker.
Kanok ka tabertam na malakataliak tam na ang langok kamarbarong. Tabra una anin marjung tam na tamat ko atit na tangungit chotit na tabrang miktiuntay na angalan ni Anu angalan chuklugu pikangat.
So we went with the one version. Obviously, the last several weeks have suggested that that was not a version that the majority of residents or the MLAs wanted to see. So we have gone back, and I've had cabinet suggest that we revisit that.
Tight na nanim luta pikangat tam na. Tight na nanim lugo. Tabar tamat ko atin na Northern Territories ninyo ni akto tabar tight na ilihimag putay na tunagalan. April 1st me ilichare pe na aktu kanok kanok accepting nik. Kaya nak. Range Lake min akolek tam na tabaw na ilihima ni aktut tamat ko tangung ichodin tam na kuya ilichare kaya niya naman tamat ko alangong ichod. Tabalo tayo na tangurad mat ko tabra taramik tamat ko na nga na munakrehurut. Iya maragut tap to Mr. Trump o kakahukang tamat ko tabalo tayo na tabalo tayo na tabra kanokin niyak tila nga ilichore kakalago tabalo tayo na kihenik anin niya kaya tam na tabalo tayo na tamat ko to kahit kangit ilichore niya kakanagit nagalunin man in Northwest Territories ni tabraw na ataw kihen.
Roll out, it is being implemented, and Mr. Speaker, the idea here is to get at the root.
Tabraw tap ko at habak tuani habak wingming ni tabra alangok tuneng kikputam na alangoy ang langok tuneng kikput habak tok ataramik tay na lutay na habak tuat tamat ko tabra ati hilugi tay na habak kita na yakibut. Tabraw na apakro tayo ka tabra tamat ko Woodford Building October me.
Would the minister be willing to name one of the three buildings, whether it's the housing building, whether it's
Tabalo tap ko rin lakarit apikruta lang narit ka tap muna kano tunaglan huli October mi mapikruta ka tam na kanok tila nga ulupak.
Mr. Speaker, in my discussions with Housing and WT,
Tabra Housing and WT tayo na kati makati kapke.
Northwest Territories for people that have done great service for the Northwest Territories, like Mr. Whitford.
Tabra tam na Mr. Whitford.
Examine that because again, we work with our leadership across the north, including the
Tabra Lokanyig.
so things need to be examined carefully before announcements are made. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Tabra ko na ilitra ka na nga tamat ko ng katimarinyan iglulakiranin. Tabra inyugektonik ka iglunik inyugektot ilihimagit kamani itot.
Mr. Speaker, I'm asking the minister to show some courage, some fortitude on this one, and just make a decision today and say, I will find a way to get this done, that we honor our former commissioner in that type of method, such as naming a building either new or renewed in his honor, given the
Tabra na at sakaptigo tap tuminga at sakaptigo tabra tam na tamaktuak tabar tamat ko na inyugektot iglut tabrani tait na ilihemaruguti lokatat tait tamat kotin na isuatun atakka na kita tukun atulay kiwit.
I don't want to chew up too much more time, but it just seems like, well, we're going to examine this. I mean, we could be in the 22nd assembly from the sounds of the way that the government.
Tabray lokatat tait na tunaglan. Tama tabray minihitak tait na munakila ba tait na.
Current sitting showing that we're talking about this idea and being willing to make a decision. That would be grateful to me.
Tabray tait na tunaglan. Ilichore pella kuma nakuha na yakige tam na hukay huragalunga atadami kapakruta kinga. Tabre ubagut tabre tait na lokata tabre tam na ilichore kanya miyong kanok.
Oral questions. Member from Yolney Center.
Mr. Speaker, the Assembly, if I said Assembly, I want to make sure I was clear. I meant the sitting, just so we're on the record. If the Minister meant the Assembly in 2.5 years, I think, that's the definition of bureaucracy in the sense of...
Tabre lokata tait na maunga akapiraw ni Liupta.
I meant assembly, and again, I'll talk to the member about this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kuyanak.
Minister opposed to NWT. Oral questions. Member from Yolney North.
Yellow Lake North me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions now are for the Minister of Finance.
Napakruta ka lang naraga.
The Employee Engagement and Satisfaction Survey identified a number of sources of movement.
Napakruta ka lang naraligid kigaw na kanok tilangit, kanok neak tilangit tapkot
In July of last year,
July mi ukut kik.
Satisfaction Action Plan was released.
Tabar tamat ko din na pinyakan na blugitin na ang alat siya na bluting tamat ko nga ukaktot.
On growing concerns that GNBT workplaces are not psychologically healthy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kuyanak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate
Kuyanak ukakti.
this is yet one more of the suite of things that we are trying to address and trying to implement across the human resources processes within the GWT. We have, as a part of responding to this, now implemented the national standard for psychological health and safety in the
Tabar ko na itwatan habak to ating
staff can understand what their rights are and what the processes are, and whereby supervisors and managers can have some toolkits available to them. With respect to that implementation, specifically training associated, Mr. Speaker, I'm more than happy to get some details on where we're at and what we plan to do. There is much more happening, and really one of the kind of critical things as that.
tabar tam na Hapak nakalak to luit, tabar tamat ko din na habak to tayo na itwatan habak to ako luit. Piakluk taktit kong iluit habak to tayo na tabar tayo na ay papak habak to anikin na munak rilaktut. Tabar ako yung ginaya kaya tam na tabar hibon mukpan hibon mon awlak liit pan tam na tabar ako yung ginaya liit kaya. Kaya na ko kakti.
Part of the survey that came out, what
Una
is
tabra.
GNBT doing about the widespread concern that information does not flow effectively between senior leadership and staff? Thank you, Mr.
Tabra ko tuhak na lichak to na. Tamat ko na raktola liwit tamat ko na kaukliw rot. Inyugek tot kaukliw rot na tamat ko tuguliw rot tayo na ataw chikun tayo na atoktola ni liwit.
This is one that's of particular interest to me. So, and again, on this one, Mr. Speaker, this is where each department, because there are
Tabra na hibuliw rok. Tabra mat ko tabangit na alagik tut.
but as for individual implementation of each, I don't have that in front of me. I'm more than
pangmapakit na hamni na kalaktok tam na kuleakraga.
Also, I'll put it to the House here so that it can be tabled, Mr. Speaker. It's important that employees see that there's action being taken on this. Thank you.
Kaya
Mr. Finance. Oral questions, member for Yellowknife North.
Yellowknife North me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kaya
Building on that, many staff reported in a survey that they feel they don't have appropriate access to data and information in order to
Tabarlutay na tamat ko nga na Islamic na anichilay pating.
reality and secrecy is not our default mode, our default operating mode.
Tamat ko tabar nalagto na tamat ko na ilichakap kay niya ko na ilaktakit kung ikiput.
So as I mentioned, the Household Action Committee that's formed from across departments, one of the very first tasks that they in fact have is this particular action item. It's to ensure that there are mechanisms, effective mechanisms, so that employees can provide feedback and
Tabarlutay na tamat ko na habak to tabaring miktiutaw ukakaming ukangit na nalagto ak takraurut.
have this opportunity to remind folks that that is there for staff to use should they feel it appropriate or necessary or uncertain, then they can certainly look at that. Mr. Speaker, there's also efforts across government of just doing a better job of communicating some of the work that departments are doing and that staff are doing, not the least of which would be an example of yesterday or a sessional statement of today. And of course, NWT continues.
Tabrulupag tayo na anitak niyangit kalarik putaglan tayo na ulupag tam na anitak raong chok in uwamni uwanga tayo na anitak lago pihungit tiga na tamat ko at habak to ka nipikakamute kaya na
There was a large decrease in satisfaction, particularly amongst employees of our divisional educational council.
tamat ko luta tayo na ilichare kat kamat ko din na ilihaktot ako ting tayo na habang to ni nahalaba ilihakan ni akto ako din kaya nak finance kanya ni habang ikayokti
Staff across the departments that are involved in this work, but quite specifically, there actually are
Inuvialuktun
education councils who are involved, as I said, on this committee that's supposed to start
Inuvialuktun tayo na tunagalan
monitoring the success of them,
habang niya habang takanya kabut
what may be happening in ECE, and so it was important to have them included and involved. The problems and challenges they may have could be quite different and different likely across regions. So that first action item that they're tasked with, again, the mechanisms for feedback, suggestions about how to understand what might be coming from a headquarters vision, that is likely to be one that, well, is what we expect is having a significant impact on Education Council. So again, they are represented on the next steps of what we're doing, and that would be a big part of what's happening as a first step.
For Finance. Oral questions, member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are pretty clear that they're fed up with the consumer carbon tax in this country. No matter who the next prime minister is going to be, there isn't going to be a consumer carbon tax. So my question to the minister responsible for the Minister of Finance is she ready to ditch the consumer carbon tax in the Northwest Territories? Thank you.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's, I mean, I may have my own personal views as well, but let's keep it to the processes here. And Mr. Speaker, if or when this tax gets cancelled on a federal level, this Assembly can certainly expect to be revisiting that issue as well. Thank you.
Minister of Finance. Member from Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, we're often accused of being slow to move as a government. We have a bill that can be brought forward and axe the tax tomorrow. So is the minister willing to support that legislation, Bill 3, and get rid of the carbon tax in the Northwest Territories? Thank you.
Here. Member from Range Lake, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, until there's a change in the federal legislation, we are still obligated to comply with some form of carbon taxation. And so, again, pending what may or may not be happening on a federal level or when, then we will certainly want to make sure that we're ready. And it's very helpful and handy to have something at the ready when that day comes. Thank you.
Finance. Member from Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, I find it unlikely that a prorogue parliament and a government paralyzed by a leadership contest is going to be ready to impose the backstop. Let's give Northerners a carbon tax holiday until the feds can sort their business out. Can the minister commit to giving Northerners a carbon tax holiday until the federal election? Thank you.
From Range Lake, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I'm not mistaken, this particular bill actually might be with committee, and so not really for me to comment further on here. And as far as trying to circumvent whether or not we're supposed to comply with the federal law, again, Mr. Speaker, the only response I really can give is that we are supposed to comply with the federal law. But again, bill is before committee, and so certainly happy to see how that process may unfold. Thank you.
Minister of Finance. Final supplementary. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the committee were to be supported, well, that's a hypothetical. Mr. Speaker, can the minister can also zero out the regs. She doesn't need legislation. She could make the regs $0 for the tax, $0 for the revenue. Is the minister willing to do that? Again, we have a golden opportunity to give Northerners a break for a couple of months. The minister, lower our cost of living, give Northerners a break, give them a carbon tax holiday. Thank you.
You're here.
Member from Range Lake, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have on many an occasion provided this House, both this government and the last, with my own frustrations with this carbon tax and the bit of stink I've raised with the federal ministers responsible for putting us in the situation we are in. Mr. Speaker, certainly, again, happy to go and look at it, and if there's a way that I can appropriately and responsibly get ourselves out from underneath this tax, that's fine. It's not really a time where I necessarily want to try to stick it to the federal government or make something difficult or suggest that we're not on side with a federal piece of legislation. So again, Mr. Speaker, this is not a tax that is well implemented in the North. We've all said that here. We just want to make sure that we are on side with the rules and regulations from the federal government, and that we are doing so in a way that is, particularly at this juncture with what's happening internationally, that we're doing so in a way that's respectful and responsible as a member of Team Canada. Thank you.
Minister of Finance. Oral questions. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because I like asking questions to the Minister of Housing, I think I'm going to ask another one. It's been taking a long time, glacial pace, to get the Aspen building project up and running. My understanding is the doors were just kicked open the other day and the contractors finally started work on that. Can the minister start off our discussion today with what's actually happening and when's that project anticipated to be completed? Thank you.
Yellowknife Centre. Minister responsible for Housing and NWT.
Well, good news, the contract has been awarded, as the member knows, and we're hoping to have completion fall of 2025. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Housing and NWT. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Mr. Speaker, we all know housing opportunities don't runneth over. So, in other words, there's not an oversupply in housing opportunities, certainly here in the capital or even in the regions and small communities. Mr. Speaker, what was the delay specifically as to get this initiative off the ground and into the construction phase? Because the last major report we had on this was through the Premier's office, where they were trying to evict the squatting tenants, as they say, so they could start construction. So can we find out what the delay was? Thank you.
Member from Yellowknife Centre. Minister responsible for Housing and NWT.
Mr. Speaker, with Housing and NWT in our contracting process, we have to run through a number of processes and making sure that we're following policies with Housing and NWT, including the delay with the encampment, securing the site, and ensuring the employees on site are safe and secure. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for Housing and NWT. Final supplementary. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad to hear the minister is now converting to the minister of process, because it seems to come out in almost every answer that the process will be led by the process once we're convened on the process. Mr. Speaker, can the minister be more specific, because the encampment was removed in large part out of the way months ago. Furthermore, I think the lone holdout still wouldn't have caused an issue. That said, there must have been a real reason that contract had not started. And I'm asking, what's the delay? Because ultimately, Mr. Speaker, I want to know who's responsible for the delay. Was it the contractor? Was it the GNWT? And will we be taking responsibility? I think the Premier's waving at you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Member from Illinois Centre, Minister responsible for Housing and NWT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a little distracted here as well, but yeah, there's processes. If I'm the Minister of Processes, that's fine, but again, we have to follow process. We are government, we're a public government, so again, Aspen Apartments, it's gone through a number of things. We have awarded a contract. The work is ongoing. The site is secure. There was an encampment issue. There's a number of things that happened. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister responsible for Housing and NWT. Colleagues, our time is up for oral questions. Oral questions. Oral questions, written questions. Mr. Clerk. Well, returns to written questions. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a return to written question number 8-20(1), asked by the member for Great Slave on October 30th, 2024, regarding improving fertility and family planning supports in the Northwest Territories. Mr. Speaker, I have a return to written question 9-20(1), asked by the member for Yellowknife Centre on October 31st, 2024, regarding the staffing of doctor and specialist positions within the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority. Mr. Speaker, I have a return to written question number 10-20(1), asked by the member for Tunaday-Willowday on November 1st, 2024, regarding complaints in the healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, I have a return to written question number 11-20(1), asked by the member for Range Lake on November 1st, 2024, regarding ground search and rescue. Mr. Speaker, I have a return to written question number 12-20(1), asked by the member for Yellowknife Centre on November 1st, 2024, regarding the cost of living. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Returns to written questions. Returns to written questions. Replies to the Commissioner's address. Replies to the Commissioner's address. Petitions. Petitions. Reports on committees of the review bills. Reports of committees of the review bills. Reports on standing and special committees. Reports on standing and special committees. Tabling of documents. Minister responsible for Housing and NWT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following 4 documents. Follow-up letter for oral question 303-20(1), local housing organization support. Follow-up letter for oral question 306-20(1), housing repairs. Follow-up letter for oral question 378-20(1), housing waitlist, and follow-up letter for oral question 405-20(1), winter road season planning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Housing and NWT. Tabling of documents, Minister of Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following 10 documents. Follow-up letter for oral question 305-20(1), heating oil. Follow-up letter for oral question 323-20(1), Dempster Highway and Inuvik Tuktoyaktuk Highway conditions. Follow-up letter for oral question 325-20(1), project cost overruns. Follow-up letter for oral question 343-20(1), impacts of climate change on winter and ice roads. Follow-up letter for oral question 374-20(1), Mackenzie Valley fiber line backup. Follow-up letter for oral question 421-20(1), regulations for e-scooters. Follow-up letter for oral question 333-20(1), fiscal policy. Follow-up letter for oral question 333-20(1), housing budget allocations. Follow-up letter for oral question 418-20(1), cell service. And follow-up letter for oral question 423-20(1), carbon tax. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for infrastructure. Tabling of documents, Mr. Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following 6 documents. Additional information for written question 11-20(1), ground search and rescue. Additional information for written question 12-20(1), cost of living. Follow-up letter for oral question 312-20(1), transitional housing options and supports. Follow-up letter for oral question 361-20(1), healthcare sustainability initiative. Follow-up letter for oral question 413-20(1), economic viability of the Northwest Territories. And follow-up letter for oral question 397-20(1), overdose-related RCMP calls. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Premier, tabling of documents. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following 14 documents. Additional information for written question 9-20(1), physician vacancy rates. Follow-up letter for oral question 328-20(1), speech language pathologist positions. Follow-up letter for oral questions 340-20(1), supported living review and recommendations. Follow-up letter for oral questions 342-20(1), primary care reform. Follow-up letter for oral questions 347-20(1), physician workforce plan. Follow-up letter for oral questions 348-20(1), healthcare services. Follow-up letter for oral questions 358-20(1), primary care physicians. Follow-up letter oral questions 364-20(1), Toledo Health Center project. Follow-up letter for oral question 369-20(1), Denonation healthcare concerns. Follow-up letter for oral question 375-20(1), updates to diagnostic imaging medical communication system. Follow-up letter for oral questions 376-20(1), online physician booking service. Follow-up letter for oral questions 382-20(1), approval of non-medical escorts. Follow-up letter for oral questions 399-20(1), diagnostic rates for autism. And follow-up letter for oral questions 419-20(1), Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority operational concerns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Health and Social Services. Tabling of documents. Member from the Sawtooth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to table a package of documents dated, compiled by the town of Norman Wells regarding the town's declaration of a local state of emergency for humanitarian reasons. Merci, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member from the Sawtooth. Tabling of documents. Colleagues, pursuant to Section 106(4) of the Legislative Assembly and Executive Council Act, I wish to table a report of the Northwest Territories Integrity Commissioner on the complaint by Daniel Richards, Denizli Nakako, about staffing appeals from hiring decisions by the Northwest Territories Power Corporation. As well, pursuant to Section 106(4) of the Legislative Assembly and Executive Council Act, I wish to table the report on the Northwest Territories Integrity Commissioner dismissing the complaint by Denizli Nakako about Minister Wozniak's husband owning shares in the Canadian Utilities Limited. Tabling the documents. Tabling the documents. Notice of motion. Notice of motion. Motions. Motions. Notice of motions for first reading of bills. Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I give notice that on Friday, February 7, 2025, I will present Bill 17, Municipal and Community Affairs Statutes Amendment Act, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs. Notice of motion for first reading of bills. Just have a quick break. Reading the bills, Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I give notice that on Friday, February 7th, 2025, I will present Bill 18, an act to amend the Partnership and Business Names Act, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
To Minister of Justice. Notice of motions for first reading of bills. Notice of motions first reading of bills. First reading of bills. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters. Committee report 17-20 brackets 1, Standing Committee on Procedures and Privilege report on review of rules of the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly, with the member from the Sawtooth in the chair.
I now call Committee of the Whole to order. What is the wishes of committee? The member for Inuvik Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, Mr. Chair, the committee would like to consider, right here, sorry, committee, apologies. Committee would like to consider Committee Report 17-20 brackets 1, Standing Committee on Procedure and Privileges Report on Review of the Rules of the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, member. Does committee agree? Agreed. Thank you, committee. We will take a short recess and resume with the first item. On. Thank you. Welcome back, members. Consideration in Committee of the Whole of Bills and Other Matters. Committee Report 17-.
17-bracket 1 Deborah Utekalichu Taptemua Northwest Territories ni Mani Nunaptingi Wani Hibunewak Pangmi Deborah 17-Utekanyali Dumua 17- Deborah got Kolea Nearite He would not that.
Member for Great Slave.
Goeiedag, Range Lake me. Deborah got Kolea that. Got a little of Gairot. Deborah got Okaktim in Damna Anitanga. Deborah got 17-2 bracket 1. Tapos mga nulang na. Inuit nalagkaktat na okang tam na okaw tigingin na marong. Tabraw got wanga isumati na nudit koneriga una. Kaya na ko kakte. Tabraw tamat ko na ilokating na kuha niya kat. Ilokating na kuha niya parong. Nagakto kakanak pada. Great Slave me. Kuya Tabraw got akapirit. Tabraw got kanakanik pata. Una isagutin niya kat. Ilakating nakuhanak parang una. Nagakto kakanak pata. Tay na tam na nakuhanak parang tam na pipkananak parang. Great Slave. Kuya nak. Tabraw got atawhemi kaanimin nagalunin 24 ni kaanimin tam na nutit atawnya na put ilitsarip kanya tigutaptimun nakuha niya parang ilakating nagakakak mita ilakating nakuha niya kat tam na tayo nagtitak nakuha niya kat. Tabraw na ukakti kanolaka tabraw tap ko din na ingmi tayo na isumatik migun nagtitalaga. Tabraw nakuha niya parang ilakating nagakto kakpita. Nagakto tabraw tam na nakuha niya kat. Tabat taptum nga tawduktonin na sisamangan nun nudinear na tapna. Tabaw na minihita din na ing mitiyun apakirtakal apakirlarut. 7. Tabaw tamat kot tabaw lokating tayo na tamat kot 11. 11 ngorok tabaw tap kot na nalagdak kakating utak titsinyak titapin tamat ko nga okak nalagdak doon.
Notices of motion. 17, notices of motion for the first reading of bills. 18, first reading of bills.
Hibulak tam na oka anin niyakat.
21, report of committee of the whole. 22, third reading of bills. 23, orders of the day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kuya na okakte. Kuya pagka Grace Slave min taigok to lektok nagakto magpit pita.
Mr. Chair, I move that this committee recommends that Rule 7.2 brackets 2 brackets B be amended by adding the words within 21 calendar days or on the first day of
Tabo kot tabo 21 dun dat kakautit tap kot na okakadat kano heraw tisrangit ilinyari but.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kuya
This committee recommends that Rule 7.2 brackets 4 be amended by replacing the words 3 with 2. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kuya nak tamat ilokating nakuha niya katam na nagakto nyakot Grace Slave min kuya nak got 7.2 bracket 2 tam na ilyakit kugalon kitap taminga kaya nak parang ilakating nagakto kakanak pita tam na Grace Slave min kaya nak 7.2 tam na ilyakit kugalona kaya tap de mga igulugo kaya nak okakte kaya nak nakuha niya pa rin nakakta magpakakita Grace Slave min kaya nak okakte tabo kot na tabo kot na tabo wan manting minyanin hibuler min pingatsak palo tabo ilokang tapkot Friday patahin talimek patahin tabo tayo nationalan 10 o'clock pang ulan mi isang utiliting kanod na nagalan ato ko na aktilak ng tam na nalunak to tam na tabo kuya nak parang Grace Slave min kuya nak tabo kot Monday hibulak niya pikpantal ay per niya pingatser niya talimer niya hihammer niya ilo tamat ko ato takanakay kaya nakatap ko kaya nak 9.1. bracket 16 tap ko na tam na minita mo kehenik ukad lang nakat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this committee recommendation. I've reflected on my experience both as a regular member and as chair of the past chair of committee as whole in the 19th Assembly. I've also considered where discussions like this usually take place in the Legislative Assembly and where there are several
Tabelo kay na kafe kwak pita tema tam na tok taklo. Tabra apakru takauming apakru laro tinyun. Tamat ko nga hibun niyok tinun.
as this happens in an appropriate setting for those discussions. Recently, there has been a change to question period, reducing, well, we just talked about it, reducing the number of questions.
Tabra kapinig tabra tamat ko nga apakru irak to hibi hu hilakalo hibi hurwa tun apakru takong ichok. Inyong nun tamat ko nga apakru irak to tamat ko MLA gurod minihita nun. Ilan ni hibi hurwa ni apakru irak to. Tamat ko. Tamat ko na. Tamat ko ilitso kanya pe ako ting ilitso kanya larot apakru irak larot. Tabrata hiyal lagat tamat ko nung kihunun lakay hiyal kumisum.
Efficiency of committee of the whole time. Committee of the whole time is limited and valuable time resource. It is essential that we use this time efficiently. If we make this rule change, we might end up
Tamat ko na. Tap ko ilitso kay pe alawit mat ko nga hibun niyok tinun nagalunin MLA guronon ilokanyon ki hibun niyok tinun tamani MLA guronon apakrok takong tap ko nga minihita uronon tamat ko kang kanyak kay pe alaw apakrok takalat kugalakit ka tabab tayo na tun naglan ilitso kanya pe ako ting ilitso kay lalo ting. Tabalo tamat ko nga malawtalayanig tayo na ro na. Tayo na ito nagalan tabala. Tayo na ito nagalan minihita urot. Tamat ko aloy na hawaktik.
I also believe that, if we were to do this, this could be an opportunity, but it would be something that we would be prepared to be able to, further have.
Tabelo tayo na isuatun tayo nakakopta. Tayo na isuatun taman na malakotaliya katakopti ko. Tabelo tayo na tap ko tabelo pitko piakalakit ka tap ko. Kuyanak ko kakte. Kuyanak minita rak simila.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be voting no against these two recommendations, so I thought it was important that I say a few words. I am a member of this committee, and I felt it was only fair for me to explain myself. As a member and a new member to the Legislative Assembly, we go sometimes into these meetings and there's a lot of information, a lot of dialogue going on with all this stuff, and
naga tamalog tap ko ka okhay kangik malawtaleni nun ilit ko kangik tabe naga tulakika ka ewanga ki taina habakata blunga tabe ni tabe tamat ko pirakrapet ilan ni pirakrapet agumata pit kovlugit taina isumatigit ka ubanga ptek tabe ni akapera bluna tabe apakaruta kapta tabe tamat ko minihita roti na kanok kiguti krangit tabe kangek kepe akalawaki tamna tabe hibul ubanga tabe nutago blunga ubani tap ko tabe Kinak malgong nik tabe tap ko nagarika Range Lake min
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while I appreciate that we are, have difference
Kinak
on anything, right now,
Kinak tabe tamat kuninga
the Standing Committee on Procedures and Privilege,
tabe tamat kuat tamat kuat na ubagut tabe taina ilakata taina ilihimagibut
there's a rule currently that is 5.3 brackets 3. Statements, and it's any member without notice move a minister statement into committee of the whole for discussion immediately following the conclusion of minister statements.
tamat ko tabe tamat taina minihita na okhahinga minihitam uma ang miktiguntaok taina malakotaleanon illiqillarut taamna tabra naittok ituitchok taaptumuna tabe tamat kot
A robust discussion around its contents, and it would be one set of house talking to itself, essentially. And the desire of the intention of this rule is to allow scrutiny around statements of public policy that are coming. It's an ancient rule.
tabe tamat kot na tabe taina tabe tamat kot na utektichilaru tamat kuninga
The idea that this will be a kind of de facto thing, that as soon as a member says, hey, I want a minister statement moved into committee of the whole, that it automatically comes here, that witnesses have to be called, that it grinds government to a halt, wastes all the staff time. I think those are overblown because, quite frankly, if members started to abuse this rule, there's a vote. This thing's not automatic. So, if cabinet feels
tabe lakating taina tamat kot malakotalet na hemmagauti mitigit na tamat kot na hebon nertit malakotaleng taina ptok anillagit tamanga pilyagait agalaktanin aglan iliture peakharan na tabaptak taina tabra ilokata taina nirawakakata tamat kot pilait kibut
the problem we're trying to fix is this is kind of a vestigial, this is an appendix, it's a vestigial part of the rules that doesn't have any practical application. So the committee
tabaptak taina tabalu taina tamat kot na agalakto ako ni pirakrat pihuk tuni agalakto akakane pinyaitchut
more time as members of this institution than any other parliamentarian in Canada. Maybe Nunavut is close to ours. But let's say for southern Canada, certainly we have more time than those assemblies and parliaments. So that's the point here, is we're here to talk about the issues. We're here to debate the issues. We're not here to just do government business. You know, there's two sides of this house, and at the end of the day, it's the people we serve, and our constituents want to see us have these debates. They want to see
Tamat ko tabra Inuit habaw takikabot. Kahit nakinyak to ako ting nalagtaktot. Tamat ko kahit na alanga hikpantam na
Effort here is to take, again, a vestigial rule that doesn't have much purpose and give it some new life and allow for more robust and engaging debate around public policy issues. And just because we hear it at standing committee, most of that works in camera. We can have public hearings and people may tune in, but they also, when we're sitting, the public's attention is on us, the media's attention's on us as well. And sometimes there is a statement of public policy that people want to talk about. And I think that we should leave that option available to the members to decide how to use it, rather than keeping it on the books as it is. And I might add, even if we don't make this rule change today, there's nothing stopping members from doing this. And if we need to work, if members have the desire for witnesses to be brought in, we can make those motions as well. I just think this would be a better way to do it, where it follows fidelity with our process for reviewing estimates and bills, rather than having it right now where we have ministers who make these statements say basically, you guys can talk about it, I'm just going to sit back, maybe I'll chime in. That's not the intention here. So I really think that we're raising alarms over nothing, because again, if there's not a desire to use the rule, then it can be voted down. But the way it stands right now, we should get rid of it or make it useful. And the committee's goal, the committee decided to try to make it more useful. And I do support that direction. I know that my honorable friend across the way from Hay River South was on that committee as well, and he's heard these submissions as well. So I appreciate what he's saying today, but I do fundamentally disagree. I think we should always err on the side of more debate in this chamber, not less, and we should not be giving way to the voices of our constituents for the business of, or for the machinery of government. The people should come first, not the process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to the member Range Lake. To the motion, recognizing the member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess fundamentally the MLA for Range Lake has spoken quite well with respect to the issue. I mean, often we worry about convenience in the sense of, well, we could just move it along without proper to's and fro's of good, valuable discussion. And I think really the public's being denied this opportunity by this simple change. As you mentioned, we could do it through other forces by forcing it through an actual vote, or we can make it part of the normal business, given the fact that even if we don't do it, it's still there. I honestly see that currently now it's set up as a one-sided dialogue, and I think the public is truly being ultimately denied that dynamic conversation that's important. I won't go at length, or you won't repeat what he said about the nature of our politics, but just having this discussion, even for the consideration of it, is very important. We always have other opportunities, and if Cabinet still feels it's being threatened in the sense of time or et cetera, in the process-wise, they could always write the Speaker and just say, we feel the spirit and the intent of what this has been, has never lived up to why the members asked for it or why committee supported this, and we could clearly change it back. Because that whole idea, from my view, is making these dynamic conversations. I mean, it's frustrating hearing that people only say one thing, say something once, and then they don't hear an answer later, and then they don't know why. People get mad at us saying, well, why didn't they answer that question? Well, they already spoke. Oh, wow. That doesn't make any sense. The last thing, and this one's going to be a little bit, what's the word, prickly. I think that statement about wasting resources was about the most rich insult this side of the House has heard. And it's not directed at the member, because we heard the other person say it yesterday. I mean, yesterday alone, in the gallery, in the Great Hall, we had the Premier flanked by 6 ministers or 5 ministers, and frankly, the frustration is money's being spent in different types of processes, and we have no way of, you're saying this is a waste of money having a witness available? The fact that tomorrow when the budget speech is, we're going to see loads of deputy ministers, hundreds of thousands of dollars of brain trust sitting there just listening to the finance minister's speech. And all we're asking for is better witness engagement for a conversation. So I don't think the fairness of the dialogue is that we're intending to waste money. No one's criticizing you're wasting money. We're just trying to make these dynamic, fruitful conversations that we can share improperly so the public can see the value of them. And I'm sorry that may be sensitive, but having deputy ministers sit in the gallery for an hour, stand around for an hour, and all we're asking for is potentially 1 or 2 witnesses, even if we call upon them, is a bargain considering the value of the money that's being spent. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't think that that's a fair statement by saying it's a waste of resources in any way. I mean, at that point, we might as well just only do minister statements, and even those, I don't even know if we need to do them a year. We could shut down the whole process probably, if it was all about the money. But it's not. It should be about the dialogue and narrative of how we get there. So, Mr. Chairman, that's I think it's a missed opportunity for those who want this to be shut out. And it's those who decide that they don't like the process, which can extend question period, don't like this, don't like it. This is us trying to engage people in the process. So there you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you to the member, Yellowknife Centre. I want to remind to the motion was mentioned, members please stay focused on the motion at hand. Moving on to the motion, the member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly don't have a nearly as passionate.
Tight na isumati kapkili. Tamat ko din na okaw tigiligo tam na pihuk takput din na isumagiligo tutrik kakayarik put. Tabra pinga yo ko ni na angala chigup te tabra tam na tabra tau na itwinyak itwinyak nyak tok tam na malakotalak put ay papak.
Committee's recommendation. I don't think that this one is going to cause as much trouble as some of the ministers feel it might. If there's any indication to me that that's starting to become the case, I'll happily be a part of reviewing it again and taking a second look at it. But as the member pointed out, the member for Range Lake, I mean, the rule exists already that minister statements can be referred to committee of the whole. So this is just putting some parameters around that, and the debate itself that might ensue could potentially be more useful to the Assembly. I think it stands to be seen whether or not it's going to be used very much at all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Frame Lake. To the motion, recognizing Inuvialuktun.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was a member of this committee as well. I will be supporting the motion. Again, I'm not going to reiterate what all my colleagues have already said. I'm shocked that we're spending this much time on it, given the the other fish that we have to fry in this building. It's again, the opportunity to do it has already been there, as my colleagues have said. I support the motion, and I'm hoping that we can move forward and have a vote. And again, as the member from Frame Lake said, if it gets deferred back, we'll take it back to committee.
Thank you to the member Inuvialuktun. To the motion, recognizing The member, Hay River North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make clear that Cabinet doesn't have a position on this. All the Cabinet ministers may vote the same way, but there is no Cabinet position. This is these are motions about how this House functions, and members are allowed to vote as they please. We all have different experiences, and it's all very procedural. My issue with this motion is
na kanok isumatiginyarumidung tamna allakun na allakun tamanna malakotaliakrak pikparrum. Tabrelo katatay na tamat ko atin na kinyawratigun munakrirat kinyawranik tabrelay na tabrel tamat ko atin na isum ilihimaribut ilakata ilihimarugut tamat ko nga tamat ko atin na talimanik na munakrakaktugut ilakata tayo na tabrelo tayo na ngitiutok tayo na isumati kamisyung tabrelo ka tayo himagipagtam na mani akapiraw kapta nagalunin hibun niyok tao kapta hibun niyok tao rugut ilakata tamat ko din na allakunit na angalan niya kaptit tamat ko at malakatalaguruat ay papak tamat ko at tayo na kanaitsut aglan tabrung aglan okalak tunga.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the work of the committee. I was relatively agnostic towards most of the recommendations and quite happy to just accept them and again, I'm not on the committee. I have a lot of work to go through these things. I'm glad they've done it. I appreciate the recommendations. This one obviously has come up now. And there's been a lot of discussion. I have had a lot of opportunity over the last 5 years to sit in the witness chair during committees of the whole between different departments, particularly with finance. It is actually a great opportunity for me to talk all about government because I get asked quite a range of conversations and quite a range of topics. I don't necessarily mind that, Mr. Chair, and so with respect to the idea that the rule as it exists would be one-sided, Mr. Chair, I'd probably find it pretty hard to sit on my hands if I had a room of members making comments about a statement I had made. So happy to try to see if the rule could work as it is. But outside of that, I have to say I am swayed that this is not about deputy ministers' time. This is literally their job to come and do this stuff, and it's sometimes their job to come to this house and be in this house. I'm not worried about that. I am sometimes though worried that we do wind up, and I've seen it happen repeatedly, that right at the end of session we are rushing through things because it's taken so long to get through the items that are in COW. Not that the things that we're talking about aren't important, but just that there's other places that we could have those conversations, not the least of which is question period, but also all the committee work that can happen throughout the entire year. And wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if the public had opportunities throughout the year through those processes to have a bit of meat on what is happening in this Assembly and in the government. And so I think I am swayed by that, and we'll be voting accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to the member. To the question or to the motion? Question's been called. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. 7 in favor, 6 opposed. Member Great-Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this committee recommends that the following rule be added to Chapter 9, 9.1 brackets 16. When Committee of the Whole is considering a minister's statement, the minister may have witnesses appear to supply information as required. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tamat ko nuktitak sa tita nu here not
Or Mr. Chair, I apologize. I'm just joking, of course.
Tabak matkat huna kanak tamatkat ilitsakanya hok tamrong atikit iliberong tam na ilitsak falaw lupiya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for using your discretion, giving me another chance. I guess it seems redundant, and so I was wondering if there was something that I was missing, but maybe the chair wants to address that in closing comments on this item, but thank you.
Member Hayward North. Member Great-Slave to motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I certainly am happy to try and clarify, but I believe, Mr. Chair, what you said is accurate. It's simply to say that if witnesses appear, they can supply information at the witnesses table. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to Member Great-Slave to the motion. Question's been called. Favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion has been carried. Back to Member Great-Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this committee recommends that the government of the Northwest Territories bring forward legislation that includes provisions for bills to have both a technical title and a short form.
Tapkat hibun neotikrabut taklilugi nagaluni naglilugi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cabinet does have a position on this one because this is a recommendation for government, and so when there's a recommendation for government, we do abstain. We want to ensure that we can actually look into these issues before we put a vote.
Tabragut nagalirgut tap tumuna tamna kabamatin na ubagut malakatalengit malingniak tilakrang iduwapting nun.
Agree in saying this is the rule of the Assembly that all bills come with a name. So it's more of Assembly process, even though, yes, you are the stewards of the normal bills and normal process. And if we pass, well, at the rate this Assembly is going, what, half a dozen bills in 4 years? I don't know, or less. The principle being is, it's true, 99% will come from the government, but I don't view this as a government direction. I see this as an administrative direction to the Assembly that all bills come forward in that manner. So I'm only disagreeing in the sense that I think it's a broader view. You know, I don't hesitate to disagree if I feel necessary or don't feel necessary, one or the other. But the truth be told is I don't view it that way. I see strictly as a procedure matter. So I would encourage a free vote from Cabinet, unshackle the bonds of That's all.
To the member, Yellowknife Centre. To the motion. Question's been called. All in favour? All opposed? All abstained? Okay. Okay, motion's been carried. Member Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee, for your patience. This is the last one. I move that this committee recommends that Rule 4.3 brackets 1 be amended by replacing the words member or the clerk with person. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Great Slave. To the motion, or the motion's in order. To the motion. Question's been called. All in favour? All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's carried. Thank you, committee. Do you agree that you have concluded consideration of committee report 17-20 brackets 1 Standing Committee on Procedure and Privileges report on the review the rules of the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly? Thank you, committee. We have concluded consideration of the committee report 17-20 brackets 1 Standing Committee on Procedure and Privileges report on the review the rules of the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly. What is the will of committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move that the chair rise and report progress.
A motion on the floor to report progress. The motion is in order and non-debatable. Massey. Okay. We're done. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, committee is concluded. Motion's carried and committee is concluded. Yep. I will now rise and report progress. Massey.
Good. Okay. Reports of committee by reports on committee of the whole. Member from the Sawtooth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee has been considering Committee Report 17-20, brackets 1, and would like to report progress with 16 motions carried. That Committee Report 17-20, brackets 1, are concluded. Mussey.
Thank you. To the motion, can I have a seconder? Moved by Dacho. Second by the Dacho. All those in favor? All those in... You said nay. Thank you. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Orders of the day, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Orders of the day for Thursday, February 6, 2025, 1:30 p.m. Prayer, budget address, minister statements, member statements, motions, returns to oral questions, recognition of visitors in the gallery, replies to the budget address, day 1 of 7, acknowledgements, oral questions, returns to written questions, replies to the commissioner's address. Petitions, reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, tabling of documents, notices of motion for first reading of bills, second reading of bills, consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters, report of committee of the whole, third reading of bills, orders of the day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Clerk, this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, February 6, 2025 at 1:30 p.m.